The Frequency War. Section 1. The Awakening. The city skyline shimmered in the hazy red dawn. Dr. Maya Chen adjusted her spectrum lens and watched the air ripple with energy signatures invisible to the naked eye. The rooftop observation post offered a panoramic view of New Angeles, the megalopolis that had risen from the ashes of the West Coast collapse of 2037. "They're gathering at the atmospheric converter again," she said, pointing to the massive structure that dominated the Eastern District. "Third time this week." Commander Reyes nodded, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of his tactical display. Deep lines etched around his eyes told the story of a man who had seen too much. The former military officer had been the first to believe Maya when she came to him with her impossible discoveries 3 years ago, shortly after the collapse began and terraforming became impossible to ignore. "The conversion rate is accelerating. Radiation levels up another 4% since yesterday," he said, swiping through environmental readings. "At this rate, the atmosphere will reach what you call reptilian homeostasis within 18 months. Maya didn't need the reminder. Everyone knew the Earth's atmosphere was changing. Higher radiation levels, altered chemical composition, decreased oxygen content. The official story from the Global Unity Coalition blamed industrial pollution and climate change. But Maya and the resistance knew the truth. It was engineered terraforming, quietly underway for decades, but only escalating to visible levels after the 2037 collapse. "It's not just the air," she said, thumbing through her data tablet. "The children in Sector 7, the ones who disappeared last month, I found records of genetic screening. They were targeting specific markers." Reyes pressed his lips into a thin line. "Energy harvesting?" "No. Something new. I think they're looking for compatible hosts." She pulled up a series of genetic profiles, highlighting sequences that appeared consistently across all the missing children. "These markers weren't in our database 5 years ago. I think they're newly emergent, a result of environmental exposure or engineered birth programs. They're building a new generation, hybrids with greater compatibility to their frequency." The resistance had learned the hard way that what they were fighting wasn't simply an alien invasion. The entities, which ancient texts had symbolically described as serpents or reptilians, existed primarily outside the visible spectrum, in what Maya called adjacent space. They couldn't fully materialize in Earth's environment, which was why they needed human hosts and why they were changing the atmosphere. Maya had once been the youngest quantum physicist ever appointed to the Global Science Directorate. Her specialization in dimensional phase theory had been theoretical until the day she accidentally created the first spectrum lens while trying to observe quantum entanglement at a macro scale. What she saw through that lens shattered her understanding of reality, and revealed the truth about who really controlled human civilization. "We've got movement," called Torres from her monitoring station. The former intelligence officer had escaped the purge of non-conforming elements within the global security apparatus 2 years ago, once the GUC's true face began to emerge. "The Shepherd convoy is heading toward the center." The center, once the world's most prestigious research facility, now the headquarters of the Global Unity Coalition, the public face of humanity's silent occupiers. Its director, Alexander Shepard, had risen to power with eerie precision after the collapse. Years of grooming by the entities had prepared him to step in once the atmospheric crisis made emergency powers possible. "Perfect timing," said Reyes. "We'll intercept them at Junction 12. Maya, you're sure this frequency disruptor will work?" She hefted the device they'd spent months developing. It looked deceptively simple, a cylindrical object about the size of her forearm with a crystalline core that pulsed with blue-green light. "Theoretically, it should create a field that prevents them from maintaining their connection to our dimension. But we've never tested it at this scale, just small-scale prototypes." She didn't mention that the energy source, a crystalline matrix powered by human bioelectric field, would burn out within minutes. This would be their only shot. "Well, today's the day," Reyes addressed the assembled team. "Remember, most of Shepard's security detail are just humans following orders. Non-lethal force only, but the inner circle, the ones with the energy signatures, they're fair game. They're not human, no matter what they look like." Maya had seen the truth for herself. Under the spectrum lens, certain individuals, always those in positions of power, displayed unmistakable energy patterns overlapping their human forms. In rare moments, when they thought no one could see, their movements became strangely fluid, their pupils shifted, and sometimes, just sometimes, their skin seemed to ripple with patterns no human skin should have. Section 2. The Unseen World. As they loaded into the transport vehicles, unmarked electric vans that could blend with the commercial traffic, Maya thought about how it had all unfolded. The atmospheric changes had started quietly long before 2037, buried under layers of disinformation. But the collapse triggered the final phase. The entities had been patient, working through human proxies, creating a world more hospitable for themselves while harvesting human energy, particularly from children, whose life force was purest. The corruption of institutions, the psychological manipulation of the masses, the deliberate poisoning of food and water supplies, it was all part of a systematic approach to weaken humanity's resistance while simultaneously preparing Earth for complete occupation. "You okay?" asked Torres, noticing Maya's distant expression. Maya nodded, "Just thinking about how long they've been planning this. All those ancient texts, the symbols carved into stone thousands of years ago, they were warnings." "Well, today we finally fight back," Torres replied, checking her weapon, the human frequency against theirs. "You still haven't told me how you discovered them," Torres said as their van wove through the morning traffic. Maya rarely spoke about that day. The memory still gave her nightmares. "I was working late in the lab," she finally said, "testing a new quantum imaging device. I thought I was alone, but then Director Shepard and 3 board members came in. They didn't see me behind the equipment." She paused, her fingers absently tracing the scar along her wrist, a memento from her escape that night. "I cut my wrist trying to force open a sealed vent when the security lockdown activated. Barely made it out." They were different when they thought they were alone. Their movements, their voices, but that wasn't what terrified me. It was when Shepard put his hand on Dr. Kimura's head, my mentor. I don't know how to describe it. It was like he was feeding on him. Kimura aged before my eyes. Torres nodded grimly. "I had a similar experience with General Winters. The way he looked at the young recruits, not with lust, but with hunger. Then 3 of them disappeared during a special assignment." Maya continued, "I modified my equipment that night to detect whatever energy transfer I'd witnessed. That was the first version of the spectrum lens, and once I could see them, I realized they were everywhere." "Hiding in plain sight," Torres said. "Not just hiding," Maya corrected, "controlling, feeding, changing us." Rhea's voice crackled over their comms. 5 minutes to intercept point. Final equipment check." The convoy approached Junction 12, where Shepard's motorcade would be forced to slow down. Maya activated her spectrum lens and watched the energy signatures of the vehicles in the distance. Most showed only human patterns, but 4 pulsed with the unmistakable rippling energy of their interdimensional enemies. "4 targets confirmed," she reported. "Shepard and 3 others. Energy signatures consistent with Alpha-class entities." The Alphas were the worst, the ones who could almost completely manifest in human form. They fed not just on energy but on suffering itself. The Resistance had discovered that the elaborate torture rituals documented throughout human history, from ancient civilizations to modern secret societies, were actually sophisticated energy harvesting techniques. "Remember," Maya said to herself as much as to her team, "they feed on fear. Whatever happens, stay focused on hope." Section 3. Revelation. The traffic control system at Junction 12 suddenly malfunctioned, courtesy of Kai, their teenage tech prodigy. Self-driving vehicles slowed and stopped in a carefully orchestrated pattern that forced Shepard's motorcade to halt precisely where the Resistance had planned. Maya felt her heart pounding as she clutched the frequency disruptor. Years of research, planning, and lost lives had led to this moment. "In position," came Rhea's voice. "All teams ready. Dr. Chen, on your mark." She took a deep breath. "Activating now." The disruptor hummed to life, vibrating in her hands. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the air around them began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. Through her spectrum lens, Maya watched as the hidden world became visible. The entity's energy signatures flared, first in confusion, then in unmistakable panic. They knew what was happening. "They're trying to phase shift," she shouted. "Full power now." She twisted the disruptor's core, channeling every bit of energy they had into the device. The crystalline matrix glowed blindingly bright, and a pulse of energy expanded outward in a perfect sphere. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The 4 alpha entities, trapped in their human disguises but unable to maintain their dimensional shifting abilities, began to transform. Their human forms seemed to melt and reform, revealing glimpses of their true nature: scaled skin, vertical pupils, impossible anatomies that defied human biology. All around them, civilians began to scream. Some could see the entities through the field generated by the disruptor. Others only saw respected government officials appearing to suffer some kind of seizure or attack. "Security teams moving in," Torres warned. But it was too late to stop what was happening. The disruptor's field had expanded beyond their expectations, affecting not just Shepard and his inner circle but dozens of other disguised entities throughout the district. Suddenly, the hidden infiltration was exposed for all to see. Maya hadn't anticipated this scale of revelation. The field is too strong, it's affecting all of them within a half-mile radius. Shepard, his human disguise half dissolved, locked eyes with Maya across the chaos of the junction. Recognition flashed in those inhuman eyes, vertical pupils contracting to slits in the morning light. "You," he hissed, his voice overlaid with a frequency that made nearby humans clutch their heads in pain. "You think exposing a few Alpha-class vessels matters?" He strained against the pulsing field, his voice shifting into something deeper, older. "You have no idea what you've done." The security teams, confused by the transformations of their masters, hesitated. Some fired on the resistance, others turned their weapons on the revealed entities, instinctive human revulsion overriding years of conditioning. "We need to broadcast this," Maya said urgently. "Kai, are you capturing?" "Streaming to every network we've hacked," the young tech's voice confirmed. 57% of the city's displays are showing this right now. They can't shut them all down fast enough." Shepard lurched toward Maya, his movements now strangely fluid, as if his bones had rearranged themselves. "This changes nothing," he said, his voice distorting. "We have been here since before your kind walked upright. We have shaped your evolution. We are your gods." Maya stood her ground. "No. You're parasites. And now humanity knows it." "They will forget," Shepard hissed. "They always forget. We control your institutions, your media, your thoughts. This is merely a setback." The disruptor in Maya's hands began to sputter, the crystal core fracturing under the strain. They had minutes, perhaps seconds, before the field collapsed. "Not this time," Maya said steadily. "We found your frequency, and now we know how to disrupt it." She nodded to Reyes, who activated the second phase of their plan. Across the city, smaller disruptors, hundreds of them, planted by resistance cells over months, simultaneously activated. They wouldn't last long, but they didn't need to. They just needed to show enough people the truth. "This is just the beginning," Maya said. "Humanity is waking up." Shepard's human face contorted with rage as his security team dragged him back toward his vehicle. The entities were retreating, their exposure too complete to maintain the charade. As the disruptor finally died in her hands, Maya watched the rippling signatures of the entities fade from visible perception, but she knew they were still there. The first battle had been won, but the war for Earth's future was just beginning. And somewhere, deep beneath the city, ancient machinery continued the slow, steady process of changing Earth's atmosphere, a project decades in the making. They would need to destroy that next. But for today, humanity had glimpsed the truth. The frequency war had begun. Epilogue: The Hidden History. 3 days after what the media was already calling the Junction 12 incident, Maya sat in the Resistance's underground bunker, watching the global response unfold on multiple screens. Some news outlets were calling it mass hallucination. Others blamed experimental chemical weapons. A few brave journalists were asking harder questions. "They're working overtime to control the narrative," Reyes noted, scrolling through reports. "But they can't control all of it," Kai said excitedly. "My tracking algorithms show the unedited footage has been viewed over 2 billion times. People are asking questions." Maya nodded, but her attention was focused on an ancient tablet she'd recovered from a museum storage facility, one of many artifacts systematically removed from public view over the centuries. Its cuneiform script, once translated, told a story eerily similar to what they were experiencing now. "This has happened before," she said quietly. "Many times. They come, they infiltrate, they feed, they change the world to suit them, and then they rule, until humanity fights back. Then the cycle begins again." Torres looked up from cleaning her weapon. "So what makes this time different?" Maya held up the fractured remains of the disruptor crystal. "Technology. Understanding. For the first time, we're not fighting them with superstition and symbols. We're fighting them with science. We understand what they are and how they operate." "And we have these," Reyes added, holding up a spectrum lens. "They can't hide anymore." Maya nodded, but a troubling thought had been forming in her mind since Junction 12. "There's something else," she said. "Something," Shepard said. "He called them Alpha-class entities. That implies—" "That there are other classes," Torres finished. "Exactly. What we've seen, what we've been fighting, might just be their front line. They're scouts or soldiers." She pointed to strange symbols on the ancient tablet. "These might represent something else entirely. Something worse." The bunker fell silent as the implications sank in. "So what do we do now?" Kai finally asked. Maya looked around at her unlikely family, a retired commander, an ex-intelligence officer, a teenage tech genius, and dozens of other resistors from all walks of life. People who had seen the truth and chosen to fight. Now, she said, we take the fight to them, the atmospheric converters, the child harvesting centers, their strongholds, and we find out what else is coming. She traced the strange spiral symbol on the tablet, the same symbol they'd discovered beneath the atmospheric converter. Because if human history is any indication, the reptilians are just the beginning. And somewhere out there, in dimensions we're just beginning to understand, their masters are watching.